We begin right now with some breaking news. A Florida jury has just recommended life in prison without parole for the man who killed 17 people at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School. The families of the victims of the Parkland massacre visibly emotional in court as they listen to the judge read verdict after verdict against Nicholas Cruz. Let's get you right out to national correspondent Haley Bull, who joins us now live with the latest on this decision. So, Haley, break down the verdict for us. What does it mean exactly? Because there were multiple counts here.
Yeah, Veronica, there were multiple counts, 17 counts of murder, and that is one for each of the 14 students and 3 staff members killed. And going into this sentencing phase, some of the family members of those victims had told us they wanted to make sure the focus here was kept on their loved ones. So the judge read through the verdict form for each person, each count of murder here. And while throughout this, many family members had kept their feelings on the death penalty to themselves. They were seen shaking their heads as it became evident that the jury's decision here was going to be life in prison without parole. Now, for the shooter to have received a death sentence, the jury had to determine aggravating factors exist. These are things that add more weight to the crime, and that those outweigh any mitigating circumstances. Now, since it must be a unanimous jury in Florida, it takes just one juror to disagree with the death sentence here. So when we break down what this jury decided, the jury found the aggravating factors existed. In this case, those are things like if the crime was committed in a cold and calculated manner, that it was especially heinous and cruel, that created a great risk of death to many, and they found that those existed and that the death sentence was possible. But at least one juror also found that mitigating circumstances existed. These are things including the shooter's background, character, any other circumstances the defense brought forward. The jury did not find that those aggravating factors the prosecution argued that they found existed outweighed the mitigating circumstances. So for the defense here, what they argued in those factors were neurodevelopmental disorders. They linked to prenatal alcohol exposure, that he was not correctly diagnosed, that he didn't receive the appropriate interventions, that he was 19 years old at the time of the crime, and argued that his brain was not fully developed, to name a few among a lengthy list of the possible mitigating circumstances there. Now, the judge in Florida cannot deviate from a life sentence without parole. If the jury had decided on the death sentence, the judge could have decided life in prison without parole at that moment. Now, the official sentencing will be moved to a later date because the prosecution has requested that the families get a chance to make their arguments and their thoughts known on the sentence beyond what they were able to say in victim impact statements earlier on in this sentencing phase, Veronica.
Yeah, some of those families, Haley, were in the courtroom so visibly shaken, so visibly upset by this decision that they had to leave. They were leaving one at a time, even before the judge was finished reading the entire verdict. Take us through exactly what happened here, Haley. How did we get here, and what will come next in this process? You've said that now the families will have a chance to say something in court.
That's exactly right. And it looks like the judge is setting a date potentially for the beginning of November here. But keep in mind, when you think about what these families are going through, you know, this has gone on for months. The jury selection here started in April. So these families have sat in court for 6 months now. The sentencing phase itself taking 3 months of that time. So when we go through what the arguments here have been over the course of this sentencing phase, and the defense's argument, we'll start there. They pointed to those neurological disorders and deficits, but the prosecution argued that Cruz's movements with the gun countered that defense, and they walked through just the very chilling facts of this case that led to the murders of those 14 students and 3 staff members. Veronica?
Haley Bull reporting live for us there. Haley, thank you so much.